Hello, this is Paul Glumaz on May 15th, 2018. I am an active political organizer with the movement of Lyndon LaRouche. And this is not a very good day. It looks like North Korea is having second thoughts about trusting the United States at this time, especially since the United States appears to be siding with the mass murderer of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. So we got a real mess on our hands, folks. The Korea thing was moving very, very well, and then we have this thing in the Middle East, which is very serious. Over 2,000 people were shot in one day, 60 dead in Gaza, not to speak of the shootings that have been going on the border of Gaza. This is a deliberate provocation by Netanyahu to trigger a reaction from Syria or Iran or Turkey or whoever, and then react, expand the reaction. The Russians at some point would have to come in to defend the Syria. Then the U.S. would have to come in to defend Israel. This is what the British have set up. This is the scenario. And in the context of all of this, the United States, in moving the capital of, moving the embassy to Jerusalem to satisfy Trump's daughter and son-in-law, and Mike Pence, the vice president, and the psychotic end times people around Ben Hagee and Stand Up for Israel and all of that, which is a core part of Trump's base. Not the majority, but definitely a vocal minority. Evangelicals are claiming to be the core of Trump's operation, which they're not. And so Trump is now in a situation where he has to cool this thing down. And he can't cool it down because the U.S. has no credibility anymore in the region. The U.S. has no credibility. Their behavior under Obama and the continuing behavior under Trump, in spite of Trump's explicit that he wants to pull out of there, he wants to defeat ISIS, he wants to defeat the terrorists. The U.S. is still supporting terrorists in Syria, which control, some are Kurds and some are terrorists in Syria, which control 40% of the Syrian area, particularly in the east and the northeast, but that's not the most populated area. So essentially, the U.S. is not is present in Syria. There is deconfliction, but the U.S. is supporting and still insurgency against the president Assad, and in support of ISIS equivalents or former ISIS, but they're all mercenaries. So the situation is that Israel is now coming in. They have been, and they're coming in with much greater force to force the U.S. To attack for Israel, for the U.S. to come to the defense of Israel once they are over their heads in terms of expanding a war against Iran and the Palestinians and the Syrians and so forth. And Israel is doing this because the government of Israel and its leader Benjamin Netanyahu are the most foul, disgusting fascists currently on the planet. Benjamin Netanyahu has maintained political power in Israel for longer than anyone else on being the most brutal, arrogant, playing on the most incredibly violent hatred that's being cultivated in Israel towards the Arabs, towards anyone that on using the Holocaust and using everything as a kind of an emotional basis for this. And then a large part of the people that left, that came, what makes it worse is a large part of the people who survived the concentration camps and made it to Israel, they were the Judenrat. They actually did the work for the Nazis. So you have all these insane people who came to Israel. Not all of them were insane, but a significant number of them were insane because they had committed the atrocities willingly and were more Nazi than the Nazis. They came to Israel because they survived, because they were more Nazi than the Nazis. They were called Judenrat, right? And these are the people which later became the core of the political structure that later took power in 1978 under Menachem Begin. Not completely, but this is the core crowd of people we're talking about. And they are being used to stoke and provoke the whole situation at this time. Benjamin Netanyahu is not a religious person. He is a total cynical, vicious, cynical person. But they're manipulating the evangelicals in the U.S. who have been created over many decades by British intelligence, promoting this Israel thing. And this is all part of what's called the breakaway ally scenario. Never to allow the Middle East to be stabilized to the point that you could develop the Middle East. Never allow the Middle East to be stabilized so you could develop the Middle East. That's been the policy of this network. Meanwhile, Mike Pence, who is the biggest supporter of all of this, is the vice president waiting to become the president of the United States. That's what's going on. Okay, he is the president in waiting. And he's getting massive support from Democrats who are out to impeach Obama. Not the general, out to impeach Trump. The Democrats who are wittingly mobilizing to impeach Trump intend to bring a psychotic, end times, conservative, nuke Russia, China, guy who calls himself the Dick Cheney, the new Dick Cheney, into the White House. That's what their intention is. These are the Democrats, the so-called liberal Democrats. That's their intention. Why? Because they're all assets of the British Empire. The leadership, the money's coming from Soros and so forth. That's because they're all run by the same crowd. They may have different colorations, they may take different posturings, but they all come down to being run by the same crowd, being run by Wall Street and the City of London. That's what's going on. And right now, peace is about to break out in the Korean Peninsula. People don't realize that the Korean army, South Korean army, I don't know how many million people are in the standing army of South Korea. They are under U.S. command. Is this military-industrial complex, is this empire going to sit back and allow peace to occur between North and South Korea and the integration of North Korea into South Korea? And have to leave, our troops have to leave North Korea? And we have to turn over control, military control over South Korea to South Korea? Do you think they're going to let that happen? And that means our troops in Japan too, who have been occupying Japan since World War II, who our PTSD soldiers, routinely rape and murder Japanese women, We all know about that. That happens all the time. Do you think the Japanese love having U.S. troops there raping their women? No. But Japan is still an occupied country. South Korea is an occupied country by the U.S. since World War II. And the justification for that occupation, which a lot of people would say would be legitimate, is the hostility between North and South Korea. Remove that hostility, and why are you occupying South Korea? Why are you occupying Japan? So do you think they're going to allow this? You don't think there's going to be something that's going to try to blow up this relationship? So we heard today that North Korea is considering or is in the process of pulling out of the and maybe canceling the meeting. Don't know for sure yet how this is all going to work, but I'm sure that the U.S. supporting Nikki Haley and Michael Pence and Trump's daughter Ivanka and Jared. Ivanka and Jared are part of a cult. It's called I forgot, the Lubavitcher cult. They're part of the Lubavitcher cult. This is a messianic cult that used to believe a long time ago, before the '67 war, that the establishment of a Jewish state was a violation against God. But then once, after the '67 war, their leaders had a vision and decided that God had granted Israel rulership over the area. And so they revised their theology. And now they're one of the biggest promoters of Greater Israel. She belongs to that cult, along with her husband. That's not a good thing. Okay? So this is the weak point. This is the weak point of Donald Trump. It's his daughter, it's his son-in-law, it's the evangelical base, which is not all psychotic, but there is a psychotic element in it. And this is what you're dealing with. And this is being played now to get a war going now. Okay? To stop the Belt and Road. Now, let me be blunt about this. Iran is the key link between India, Pakistan, and Turkey. If you want the southern part, anything south of that, to connect into the Belt and Road, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Syria, the Gulf states, they have to go through Iran. It is not in the interest of the nations of the region to have a war with Iran. They need to work with Iran for their own mutual benefit. That's the importance of the Belt and Road. That's the importance of the economic development that's being promoted through the Belt and Road. The same thing in North Korea and South Korea. What's bringing all these countries together, Japan, South Korea, China, Russia, and North Korea, is the economic development of extending the Belt and Road through North Korea into South Korea, connecting them all up to the Russian Trans-Siberian Railway and connecting them into northern China, into the Chinese, and building a massive industrial capability in the Tumen River area, which is on the contiguous border of China, Russia, and North Korea. And the Chinese did build a port there, which is not being used right now in that area, right at that junction. They built a port. That port is ready to have the infrastructure built to go with it. There's no infrastructure. The port is built, but not the infrastructure. The deep water port has been established, but the infrastructure is not there yet. All of this is in jeopardy right now. And that's the situation we're in. And this is a very grave situation. It's a very serious situation that we're facing. We are on the verge of World War III if this thing continues in this direction. Okay. So, meanwhile, the Chinese are trying very hard to get the people around Trump to understand that a trade war will not work to U.S. benefit. And that the United States needs to change its economic ideas about you know, but that's not going to happen because Wall Street runs Trump's advisors. They're not going to go against Wall Street. And the City of London runs Wall Street. And the City of London has its offshore tax havens are in the $50 trillion range in terms of assets. This is where the money for drugs come in, the drug trade. This is the laundering of the drug trade. This is for all the criminal activity in the world gets laundered into these offshore tax havens. Most of the corporations have their headquarters in mailboxes in these island tax havens. Most are under the crown. This is the empire. There's a movie out there that it's going to cost you to rent called, The Spider Web of Britain's Second Empire. And this is what happened after the colonial system, after the British pretended to abandon their colonials. They created a new empire based on offshore banking, offshore financial system. This is, however, facing a collapse. This whole thing is facing a collapse, and they want to stop the Belt and Road at all costs, and they're using the weak point in the Trump administration, the weakest point to do it, to get it on with Russia, get it on with China, get it on with Iran. And Mike Pence is waiting in the wings to become the new Dick Cheney, the president to be. So that's what you're looking at. Now, one of the determining aspects of this will be the 2018 elections. And the LaRouche movement has put out a new pamphlet on the 4 laws, which is not just an update, but it's a retooling of that pamphlet. And in that pamphlet, there is the pledge to defeat the coup against Trump. And then there's the pledge to work with China in the Belt and Road. And then there's the pledge to adopt the 4 laws of Lyndon LaRouche in order to deal with the economic situation. None of Trump's promises to the American people, ending the wars and developing the United States to make America great again, are in any way feasible without an ultimate confrontation with Wall Street, which is coming, with the City of London, which is coming. And already there are areas where Trump is opposing them, but this is going to come to a head. But the key right now to wrecking the international possibilities is right now in the Middle East. Now, how do you deal with the Middle East? Well, the only world leader that has credibility in the Middle East is Vladimir Putin. He has never betrayed anybody, and he's never taken sides. He's always, maintained we need to respect the sovereignty of nations. We need to shut down the mercenary terror operations that are ravaging the region and creating all these operations. This is the so-called jihadis. They're not jihadis. They're mercenaries. And bring all the people to the table, including Israel and Saudi Arabia. So he's not playing favorites. He is the only one who has the respect of, even if they don't like him, even if they hate Russia, he has respect. His word means something. The U.S., the words coming from the U.S. mean nothing. You have this insane situation where the United States is trying to amalgamate in northwest eastern Syria a force under U.S. command which comprises Kurds who are going for Kurdish independence and leftover mercenaries. Now, mind you, where are all these mercenaries getting their money? How do they get all their weapons? Right? From this international financial system with support from the United States. You know, one of the greatest supporters of this terrorist apparatus is John McCain. He was playing a very key role in promoting it and financing and getting the U.S. to finance all of this. John McCain. You know, he's been on a crusade for a global empire, for an American British global empire from, you know, ever since he got out of wherever he was being kept in North Vietnam, Hanoi Hilton. You know, he's been on a crusade for God and empire, not for God, for Satan and empire. So the only way that you're going to deal with this Middle East crisis is to have Trump speak to Putin. Whatever Trump works out with Putin, that will be taken very seriously as a solution in the Middle East. Brokering a deal between the Palestinians and the Israelis, brokering a deal between the Iranians and the Israelis, brokering a deal between the PLO and the Hamas, brokering a deal between all these various parties. The most trusted person in the region is Vladimir Putin. Now, so this brings us to the 2018 campaign. Okay. The Democrats have decided to take back, not the Democrats, the Obama crowd within the Democratic Party, which is going around maintaining the insurrection against Trump. They're planning to run the people who are leaving the FBI and the CIA. They're planning to run them as candidates to flip the Congress so that they can impeach Donald Trump and bring Mike Pence, their beloved Mike Pence, into the White House. That's what the intelligence community wants to do. That's what the FBI wants to do. All right, so that's what you have going. And then there are many other candidates who are coming out of the woodwork because they see a shift in the population. They see a shift towards neither party. And this pamphlet that is going out is going to be followed and preceded by our contacting a lot of these layers, especially in the Rust Belt, to run on the policies of the pamphlet, to run your independent congressional, Senate, gubernatorial races on the basis of the pamphlet. We want to make these issues the key issues that people discuss, because these are the issues that you have to discuss in order to save the United States. And we want to bring those into. Now, at this moment, I believe Keisha Rogers has filed as an independent for the Houston congressional race in the district of Al Green. And I believe John Wisorek, Ron Wisorek, a farmer from South Dakota who's very well known in South Dakota, has filed as an independent to run for the one congressional seat in South Dakota. So far, these are the flagship candidates. But we want to also get other candidates involved. We want to have that dialogue with those who are running on what is it that's going to be done about the coming disintegrating financial situation, the loss of hope in the population, the opioid crisis. All of this requires that you get some economic infrastructure activity going, and the only way you can do that is to overthrow Wall Street and the City of London and reestablish a credit system and a protection of the commercial part of the banking sector. And that's the first and second law. And the third law is those infrastructure projects have to promote the greatest increase in the per capita productivity and per capita of the population. That's the only way out. You don't do that. And the Chinese are willing to help. The Chinese are willing to provide all of their treasury notes that they have holding of U.S. treasuries as initiating capital in any of these projects. The Chinese are willing to help. So are the Japanese. Between them, there's about $2.4 trillion worth of potential investment in the U.S., reinvesting the Treasury bonds into U.S. development. So this is where we are. Which way is the U.S. going to go? Are we going to go to nuclear war now? Is that where Trump is going to take us? Is that where Trump is going to be manipulated and forcing us into our events on the ground going to be out of control? Is that how we're going to go? Is our military going to run a coup against the president so that we can go to war with China and Russia? Are we going to go to war, to nuclear war, to save Israel, which is acting in a very reckless way, in a deliberately reckless way, as a breakaway ally? This is the question that we face. Thank you for watching. Next week it should get much. We should have a lot more to say.